For more on all of this, let's bring in former Israeli ambassador to the United States, Michael Oren. Mr. Ambassador, good to have you here. We heard the Israeli prime minister today say that this deal and these 20 bullet points put out by President Trump align with Israel's war goals and post-war vision. Explain that for us. Flesh it out.
Well, good to be with you, Guy and Deegan. It's actually a great day. Prime Minister Netanyahu was exactly right. The war goals were to destroy Hamas, to ensure that Hamas does not rule Gaza anymore, that Gaza will be demilitarized, will not threaten Israel anymore, and the hostages will be released. Those were the war goals. Very simple. And they were both achieved today. Now, it's true. What your reporter said in Washington is we don't know what Hamas is going to come back, what answer they're going to give. According to the 20-point peace plan, Hamas has to say, okay, no more terror. We're giving up our guns. And if we're not going to give up our guns, we're going to leave Gaza. That's not so much in keeping with Hamas's characters. We know it's a jihadist organization that prefers death to surrender. But if Hamas rejects the plan, then the president was very clear that Israel will have a green light to proceed to oust Hamas from the last bastion of its control in Gaza City, by military means.
So much, Mr. Ambassador, does also hinge on all of the other nations in the Middle East. And I just look at how, say, as one example, Egypt has behaved during this 2-year war. And there was a comment that Egypt's foreign minister made to Bloomberg that Israel is trying to force Palestinians out of Gaza by making their lives miserable. And just to think about, Egypt has really wanted to keep these Palestinians trapped in Gaza, and by not allowing them out of the country into Egypt. So there's so many other moving parts other than just Hamas in making this work.
You're absolutely right, Dig. And Egypt has not always played a helpful role here. People forget that Egypt is also bordering Gaza, and it has closed that border.
Right.
It closed that border repeatedly to humanitarian aid and to Palestinians who have sought to find refuge in the Sinai Peninsula on the other side of the Gaza Strip. All that is true, but here's the truly remarkable achievement of President Trump and his team, Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner, together with the Israeli team, is that they've gotten these different Middle Eastern countries that really don't agree on very much. It's Turkey, it's Qatar, it's Saudi Arabia, it's the UAE, and Egypt to agree that Hamas can no longer be in control of Gaza, that Hamas has brought disaster to the entire Middle East. Hamas is responsible for tens of thousands of deaths and the displacement of hundreds of thousands. And that cannot go on anymore. And I think everybody realizes that there has to be a fundamental change in Gaza. And I think this is a remarkable achievement in the annals of diplomacy.
Do you expect, and like the context from your previous answer suggests strongly, that you believe Hamas will reject this? Is that your belief?
I think it's going to be more, more subtler than that. How can it be subtler than that? Hamas is going to say, well, we kind of like this plan, but we're going to discuss it with you. We have a couple of questions. They're going to drag it out. And then, according to the 20-point plan, Hamas has to release all the Israeli hostages, living and dead, within 72 hours. Hamas is going to come back and say, mark my words, we don't know where all the hostages are. Some of them have disappeared. And it's really going to come down to President Trump, who's going to have to say to Hamas, I believe, you got 24 hours to give us an answer, yes or no. If it's yes, we have a deal. If it's no, Israel proceeds with its military operation.
But Hamas is in a weakened position like certainly we haven't seen in the last 2 years. The leadership, tiers of the leadership have been decimated, and they're relying on teenage fighters by many reports. So if not now, then never?
Well, we will see. Remember, Hamas does not think like you and I think. For Hamas, death and martyrdom is preferable to surrender to the infidel. And Americans and Israelis, we're infidels in their eyes. So it's left to be seen whether they're just young people left in the tunnels or there's some commanders left in these tunnels and who's calling the shots there. Nobody knows. Listen, we all hope that Hamas says yes and that this war can end literally tonight. Literally tonight. If not, it's going to take a little bit longer, but the end will be the same. Hamas will not be in control of Gaza, and the end there will be peace.
Do you think, because if you look at this war, which Hamas started, and has refused to end by holding on to the hostages that they stole and continuing to wage jihad against Israel and promising to do more October 7th forever, right? So we know who's responsible for this war. But on the battlefield, Israel has won dramatically. But in terms of world opinion, this is where Hamas has been more successful, by having people on campuses across the West, marching through cities across the West, kind of blaming everything on the Jewish state and, repeating lies like genocide and that kind of thing. Is there any hope that with this peace plan, which the Israelis have agreed to, if Hamas then comes in and slow walks it or kills it or outright rejects it, that anyone who's been doing the blame Israel thing will wake up and say, oh, the real impediment to peace is Hamas? Or are they so in the tank for this terrorist group that it doesn't matter how many times they prove that they're the problem?
Well, I'd like to think there'd be a segment of the people who would wake up, especially now, because the ball is squarely in Hamas's court. Hamas can determine peace or war. Hamas can determine whether Palestinians continue suffering, whether Israelis can die, whether the hostages will survive. Hamas, it's all Hamas's decision right now. And that is the elegance and beauty of this diplomatic accomplishment today. It is an accomplishment of clarity, and it's moral clarity. And I think that it's very rare. I tell you, as someone who's been in diplomacy and someone who's an historian, it's very rare to have this type of clarity. It's startling. And I can't imagine that anybody who's clear thinking in any way will say after this, it's Israel's fault that the United States and Israel didn't go the extra mile to try to end this war, and Hamas said no.
It is critical that Israel remain a beacon of democracy in the Middle East, and that, flagpole, if you will. But just before we go, there has been growing rhetoric among conservatives, or some, and they might act like it's anti-Netanyahu rhetoric, but we all know what we hear from them. How disturbing is that to you?
It is a source of concern. I'd be very honest with you. It's not just from the left. We face challenges also from the more extreme branches of the conservative camp. And we have to remind them. We have to remind them that Israel stands for exactly the same values as the United States of America. Mm-hmm. If you come to Israel, you'll find a society. This is very, very similar to America's. And we're fighting the same enemies. We're fighting an enemy that wants to destroy us physically, but also destroy us spiritually and socially. And you have now upwards of 400,000 Israeli soldiers, reservists and conscripts, who have fought in this war. Proportionally speaking, that is the equivalent of about 22 million Americans, about 8 million more Americans than fought in all of World War II.
Ambassador Michael Oren, thank you so much.
Thank you both. Good night.